Have you ever thought about what goes on behind closed doors at private prisons? I believe that in Oklahoma, we should stop contracting out private prisons and eliminate them completely. Shareholders and corporations are only in it for the money, and they aren't really doing anything to help the prisoners get better. The three topics that I would like to talk about are how private prisons are more violent due to the underpaid, low staff, and how they are untrained, how taxpayers are not really saving as much money as people think, and how private prisons cause major hardships. According to video footage from a private prison in Mississippi, guards took over 30 minutes to respond to an assault on an inmate, and their defense was that they tried the best that they could. First off, there's not really enough guards at the private prisons, and they are only paid $12 an hour. I don't think anybody would be willing to risk their lives for only $12 an hour. They also receive no benefits, and they are only trained 3 weeks, which is less than half of what normal prison guards are trained. There was also a report about a man that was on suicide watch, and he hung himself, and no one was there to help or watch him like they were supposed to. There are numerous prison assaults, and there was a man, he was calling, it was a cry for help towards medical attention. He wasn't receiving any, so he started a fire in his cell so that he could get some sort of attention. An argument that people would have is that taxpayers are saving a lot of money with the help of private prisons. That is not always true. Private prisons are very picky as to who they accept into the private prisons. They usually tend to shy away from the more violent prisoners, and the more violent prisoners are also more costly. So taxpayers are paying for the more costly, more violent prisoners, and private prisons are only paying for people that have like drug offenses and things like that. There's also 92% of the people that are in prison in public prisons, and only 8% in private prisons. Private prisons, the shareholders and the corporations also receive stipends for keeping the private prisons open from the government. Who pays the government? We do, with our tax money. So in reality, we're paying for the private prisons, and we're also paying for public prisons. Private prisons also, like I said before, they have way less people than public prisons do, so we're paying a lot for that. My last point is about how it is causing major hardships with families and the people that are going into the prisons. Angela Davis, a famous prison abolitionist, stated that although imprisonment was equated with rehabilitation in the dominant discourse at that time, it was obvious that the primary purpose was repression. It is crazy how true that statement is when it comes to private prisons. These people are not receiving the help, worse off than what they would be in a public prison, because there's way fewer staff, which includes nurses and doctors, so they're not able to help them. People are hurting each other because there's no guards to really break up fights, so there's continuous outbreaks of fights. And those that go into private prisons are mostly taken away from their families, states away, and someone could argue that it's their fault they did it, but a lot of the time they're going to the private prisons because of things like drug offenses, which they are bad, but it's not like they killed someone. So if they're in a public prison, they would most likely be able to still see their family. There are also 28% more inmate-on-inmate assaults, so they're hurting each other worse than what they would in a public prison. And there are also twice as many inmates and staff assaults as well. So, in conclusion, these private prisons are only really benefiting the shareholders and the corporations. They're making millions of dollars every year just by keeping a facility open. They're not helping them, they're not taking care of them. Those people are just getting worse off, and those are the people that are going to come back on the streets. And they're probably going to do it again. There was a statistic that said there were more inmate misconducts, more escapes, higher staff turnover, and more inmate deaths in private prisons. Also, those that leave private prisons are twice as likely to commit crimes and have to go back into prison. There are better alternatives to keeping these people out of these private prisons, but also public prisons. So I think that people need to focus on what to do to help people stay out of trouble, help people do what they're supposed to do, and we need to end private prisons totally. Thank you.